Welcome to the Topic of the Month with Kim Wardlow, an AINC original podcast. It's not easy being blind or going through vision loss, but we'll help you navigate these waters. Press on. Push forward. You've got this.
Hello, you are listening to the Topic of the Month, brought to you by the Audio Information Network of Colorado. I'm Kim Wardlow, your host. I'm pleased to be with you today. I'm the Executive Director at AINC. We're gearing up. We're in the midst of the holiday season, just a few days away from Christmas. So hopefully everyone is doing well in this busy season. We would appreciate, as you're listening to our podcast, if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast. That would be really helpful to us, and we always appreciate any feedback that you give us. So today, Ellie Carlson is joining me again, and we're focusing on adapting to blindness and maybe talking a little bit more about guide dogs. But as I mentioned, as we're getting close to Christmas Day, do you have any special holiday traditions, Ellie?
Hey, Kim, thanks. Holiday traditions, I really don't. I have to be honest. We celebrate my dad's birthday. It's just before Christmas, and that's a bigger deal for our family than Christmas is itself. But I take that back. We've come to create a pretty elaborate scavenger hunt for any Christmas gifts. So instead of just stacking them under the tree and they're easy to find, my brothers and I grew up having to really search the house for either the main Christmas gift, a foosball table or a bike or something, little things in our stocking, but scavenger hunt around the house, yeah. Santa's very clever.
Well, I'm sure your dad appreciated so many people that have birthdays near a holiday, especially, the end of year holidays, often feel like their birthday's forgotten. So I'm sure he appreciates you guys focusing on his birthday and not just forgetting it.
Absolutely, yeah.
We'll just touch on this in terms of folks who are experiencing, maybe it's their first holiday. It could be either vision or hearing loss or being deafblind. Do you have any advice as people are interacting with friends and family, and this might be the first time, and maybe they've had vision loss, but now they have some hearing loss as well, like something has changed?
Yeah. What can be very overwhelming when somebody loses vision and or hearing is large gatherings. You just kind of get lost in the crowd, and when is it my turn to speak, and who is that person if you can't see them or recognize their voice. So I suggest that folks who are going to be joining a holiday gathering and with a larger group of folks, maybe they reach out to them one-on-one prior to the gathering and just say, hey, by the way, this year I'm going to be sitting in a different spot because my hearing is better there, or I'm going to need the lights turned up more because my vision is worse. Just giving them a heads up that would be a gentle way of, you don't need to, tell them your whole medical history or ask for them to do a lot, just to, be a self-advocate and mention, this is a thing. If you're wondering what's going on, this is what's going on, and this is how I'm handling it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. Great. Especially sitting around a large table or gathering in a room of multiple voices. There are some great over-the-counter devices and even some apps for your phone, if your phone is pairing with hearing aids, to cut out background noise or to direct the listening device to a specific person who's speaking in the room. There's lots of different brands. I'll just plug locally. We have Harris Communications, and they can coach somebody in finding the right tools for their best listening experience. If you're somebody who loves to watch the holiday movies, but you need it at a really high volume and your family's like, oh my gosh, turn it down, there are adaptive devices that the individual with hearing loss can use to have it at their desired volume without blasting everybody else out of the room. So, yeah. And, out shopping, things are busy, parking lots are busy, stores are busy. If you can kind of think ahead of what time of day you do your errands, there's usually a quieter time of day. Don't go on, Friday afternoon or Sunday right during the midday after everybody's left church and is hitting the stores. Just think smart. Think ahead of can I set myself up for success and go at kind of a quieter time.
A little pre-planning helps. Could you tell us a little bit about your work with canines and canes?
Absolutely. Yeah. So after working in the field of blindness and deafblindness for several years, I've really enjoyed all my full-time employment opportunities with various organizations. And ultimately, I love them all. I want to work for them all. So I chose to be self-employed and contract with as many schools as have assignments available for me. So Canines and Canes, I'm offering myself as an independent contractor to teach orientation mobility, to help folks if they are new to cane skills, if they need a brush up of cane skills. Maybe they've been traveling independently for years, but they've moved and they need to learn a new environment. The bus route has changed. Whatever it is, that maybe they just need a couple hours, or maybe they need a full comprehensive program in orientation mobility. So that's kind of more one-on-one with individuals. And then with the guide dog side of things, the guide dog schools, just like so many industries out there are pretty short-staffed. We've had a lot of matriculation. The leaders in the field have been retiring away. There are new apprentices learning, but they're not yet ready to take on some of these more challenging situations. So with my skills and experience, I've been asked to go interview guide dog applicants, follow up with guide dog graduates. Maybe there's a dog ready for an individual would be better trained in their home environment than going away to a campus environment for their guide dog. So I've been placing guide dogs in home environments with individuals as a contractor for the school. There are a few dogs that I've taken for board and train myself. So I have either kept it in my home or found a volunteer host home nearby and then brought that dog from its puppy raising stage where it's finished with the basics and it's now starting to learn to wear the harness, to follow forward, right, and left commands, to avoid obstacles, to refuse traveling if there's a threat from traffic, that they will stop for cars. So that's something I've really enjoyed taking on as an independent contractor. And I do have a brush up dog at my feet now. There's a standard poodle. And yes, standard poodles can be guide dogs. They are not the primary breed, but for folks who are allergic to the typical Labrador, Golden Retriever, German Shepherd, standard poodles are another good option. So
sometimes individuals think, oh, I want a guide dog. I don't really want to learn that cane stuff. I just want a guide dog. But that's not the way it works, right? A person does need to have good cane skills before they apply for a guide dog. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Orientation mobility using a white cane is a prerequisite to traveling with a guide dog because a guide dog is not a fuzzy GPS system. They cannot you cannot tell them, go to the library, find Starbucks. That's not how they work. You need to have your own skills and mental map in place of, okay, to get to the library, I have to go out of my house, make a right, get to the corner, cross that street, keep on going, cross to the left, and then it's the second door. So developing a mental map, developing the cane skills to feel what is the curb like? Where do I stand? What's my positioning at the curb? What's my alignment at the curb? Because if your shoulders are throwing yourself right, you've got a right tendency, you're going to veer out into traffic. If your shoulders are throwing you too far left, you can have other obstacle complications there. So working with an orientation mobility specialist to develop straight line travel, to listen to traffic if you have the hearing to do so, to use any remaining vision in an effective way. There are folks that have remaining vision that would kind of be a conflict with their guide dog. You kind of have to pick one or another. You can't tell your dog to do its job and then override every decision they make with your vision, or do the dog's job for it with your vision. So having those O&M skills is absolutely necessary first. And also because if you were to get a guide dog, there are days when it's not going to be able to work. Maybe it's sick, maybe it's injured, maybe you're going to someplace where you can't or don't want to take your dog and you have to rely on those cane skills again.
That's good to know. What makes a good guide dog? I know not all dogs graduate from guide dog school.
No, they sure don't. There's about a 60% success rate is general for across the schools. Each of them have their individual challenges, but a good guide dog, I say, has a good on and off switch. When you're ready to walk, you need them to work, they perk up, step up, ready to go. And when you're at your destination, you're in a restaurant or a meeting or something, they have an off switch. They can just lay down, settle, chill, and wait for you to be ready to go again. You know, there's health testing that goes on. We absolutely want these dogs to be as healthy as possible to work as a guide, and temperament, that they are friendly, confident, they don't have fear or aggression issues, and they're capable of making good decisions on your behalf. So, it's a 50-50 teamwork for sure. The blind individual, deafblind individual needs to be a good team leader and is responsible for the dog's care. And then the dog needs to be able to say, I heard you say forward. However, there's a car coming and I'm going to refuse that command on your best interest. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And then on the flip side, what makes a person a good candidate to get a guide dog?
Great question. Primarily, they do need to be active enough as an independent traveler to have purposeful routes. So somebody who, they have a sighted family member that drives them, or they just lift everywhere, your cane can get you from the curb to the entrance of your appointment. A guide dog could do that also, but if that's all they get to do, they're going to be really bored. And when a dog is bored, they find trouble. And when they find trouble, the person gets annoyed and says, forget this. So somebody who has multiple blocks in their routes every day, that they're walking, they're crossing streets, they're finding seats, or, it can just be a leisure walk, but it has to be active enough to keep the dog engaged and maintain their skills. So rights, lefts, forwards, street crossings, having the dog find stairs, find a door, find an elevator, find a seat. When you get to that medical appointment, hey, guide dog, find the door. Great. Find the counter. You check in. Now you have to find a seat. You're in the waiting room. The nurse practitioner comes to get you and take you back to the exam room. The dog can follow that person into the exam room. So those are purposeful destinations. I mentioned earlier about overriding the dog with your vision. If you have some remaining vision, you just need to be able to surrender that control a little bit. Use your vision up and ahead. Overhead tree branches are the hardest thing for guide dogs to find, and they do get distracted and make mistakes. So using your vision to be up and ahead and allowing the dog to work on sidewalk level surfaces, ground level, waist level obstacles, that is their job, and not to interfere.
How long does it take a person to be matched with a dog, once they've determined that they are a good fit for a guide dog? How long does it take to get matched and then to do the training? You mentioned sometimes people go to a campus and other times the dog is brought to them and that training process occurs in their home.
That's right. Yeah, the application process starts with a form, an inquiry. So at this point, most of those are done online, but they can certainly be hard copy paper as well, or over the phone. So when somebody expresses interest in getting a guide, they submit all their information. That's going to include their proof of legal blindness from their low vision specialist. They're physically fit enough to walk with a guide dog from their primary care physician. If they have any kind of mental health issues or additional physical disabilities, that those need to be documented and understood. There's a travel video or an in-person travel interview. Just let's go for a walk and see how you're doing with your cane skills, with your street crossings, or maybe you're using a guide dog already, and how does that look? So somebody applies. That process is, anywhere from, I'd say, 2 weeks to 3 months, just depending on how long it takes for all those documentation to roll in and then for the school to sit down and review it. If somebody's approved for a dog, then depending on, if you're a pretty average lifestyle with an average pace and no specific requirements, your wait time may be shorter. If you must have a female German Shepherd because you do, these XYZ activities. For example, I worked with a gentleman who was from Alaska, and for his job, he traveled around the state in a helicopter. And so it was essential that for his guide dog match, that dog be willing and confident getting in and out of a helicopter. So that was a little longer of a wait time to make sure that we had one that we could practice a helicopter ride and ensure that, yep, this is not only a match for your pace, your pull, your lifestyle, but also can do helicopters.
Yeah, that's a special one. You probably don't get that too often.
No, for sure. But yeah, dogs are generally matched by pace, pull, and lifestyle. Do they get along with other dogs in the home, cats, kids? Are they a city dog? Are they a rural dog? Their behavior is communication. And during the training process, we take them in environments and we see, man, they really thrive in this environment and they don't really love this other environment. What are the dog's strengths and weaknesses? And how does that accommodate the individual's strengths and weaknesses? So at this point, unfortunately, due to the backlog of training from the pandemic, wait lists are, 6 months is the shortest, up to like 2 years, I'm hearing. If folks have special circumstances, they're going to be waiting quite a while.
Wow. Is there any difference for a dog or in the training if the person receiving the dog just is blind, just has vision loss of some level, or if they're deafblind?
Good question. So all of the dogs that graduate are required to meet the same standards by the International Guide Dog Federation. So across the board, they're going to be responsible, confident guide dogs. However, if I'm assessing dogs to see if they're a fit for somebody who is deafblind, someone who has hearing loss, I'm going to make sure that they are excellent at their traffic response. That if that individual isn't hearing the traffic well enough to make the best street crossing decisions, first of all, that's an O&M issue that we can address together, but that the dog will refuse that forward command or halt them if they're in danger reliably. That's the extra special over the top that I would look for in a dog for someone with hearing loss. Yep. Sure. For folks who are profoundly deaf using sign language, we would wean those dogs off of voice commands onto hand signals. So all guide dogs, we have a few hand signals: forward, right, left, stay. But with somebody who is not using speech to communicate with their dog, we can add some additional hand signals for their obedience: sit, stay, down, come, as well as, some find commands: find the door, find the stairs, find the trash. I think it's pretty cool to add that kind of secret code onto dogs pairing with deaf.
Yeah, little additional training for the dog. Mm-hmm. If somebody is interested in a guide dog, where do they start? I know there's different schools. Obviously, you said if somebody has allergies with dogs, they may need a standard poodle. Is there different schools train different types of dogs? How does somebody kind of start and research what might be best for them?
Great question. Yeah. So the very reputable schools are all accredited by the International Guide Dog Federation, the IGDF. So doing a web search or making a phone call to IGDF, and they have a kind of a search filter where you can say, here's the state that I live in, here's the type of dog that I'm looking for, what's available to me. And it would bring up the list of, all right, here's 5 programs that meet your criteria. And then you can contact them through email or phone and just get to know that program. And what I tell everybody in this situation is, you're interviewing that school just as much as they're interviewing you. So I think a lot of times individuals are like, oh my gosh, they're judging me, they're assessing me, they may or may not accept me. But you're also able to judge and assess and accept or decline their services. So if you're on the phone with them and you just have a good feeling about it, they're attentive to your needs, they call you back when they say they will, the breeds they use, the location they have, the training methods that they use, that all sounds good to you, you're interviewing them and you can move forward. If they're not returning your calls, if they're just, you'll know if that program is not a right fit for you. So you don't need to apply to every program, but you'll certainly more likely to win the lottery if you buy more than one ticket. So if you can find 2 or 3 schools that might meet your needs and apply to all of them, you have a better shot of getting a dog sooner.
So thanks for that information. I think people have lots of questions about guide dogs and if one is right, for them, or if they should just stay with their cane. And, there's a lot to be considered. Obviously, you're needing to care for a dog if you have a guide dog. And I've known folks that just for their own health reasons and things have either given up a guide dog or their guide dog was ready to retire and they just chose not to get another one because their life situation had changed.
Absolutely. People ask me all the time, well, if you were blind, would you get a guide dog? And there are times in my life where I would have said absolutely yes, and right now is not one of them. Right now, the greatest independence for me would be a cane that can just sit in the corner and it doesn't need a thing until I need to use it again. Just the demands of my time, it does take a lot to maintain their behavior, not just their working skills, but their house behavior to make them a livable. You've got to be able to work with them and you've got to be able to live with them both. And if you just throw up your hands and let them be a dog, they'll be a dog. So I will just say that, as far as is a guide dog right for me, having that conversation with your orientation mobility instructor is a great way to start. And there are also peer support groups or peer user groups, GDUI, the Guide Dog Users, Inc., as well as NAGDU, the National Association of Guide Dog Users, are 2 consumer groups that are full of information and support.
Great. Well, we focused a lot during this session on guide dogs. But for folks who say, no, I'm not really considering a guide dog, that's not for me, but they are adapting to vision loss, are there specific obstacles that you see, common, that are the most difficult for people to overcome just generally with their vision loss?
Sure. I think, I mentioned this a bit last week, but, for folks to just have patience with themselves, they're used to being able to do things quickly. And when your vision declines, it's going to take you a little longer to be able to do those same things. You might have to do them a different way. Now, instead of just spotting the dosage of the medication on the bottle, you've got to go get your magnifier, you've got to turn on a lamp, or you've got to get out your, Alexa show or some kind of technology to read it for you. And that takes more time. So just be gentle with yourself and have patience that you can still do things independently, but it will take you more time. And to conserve your energy, that if you know there's things that are going to take a lot of time because it's really inefficient for you to do those things, that may be the time to say, hey, this is where I'm going to use my friend, family member, support service provider to assist. And, friends and family members, neighbors, whoever you've known as a sighted hearing person, they may express some frustration or impatience with you that things are taking up more time. But hopefully, you can able to strike a balance as far as how much do you do independently and not ask for help, and how much do you say, this is a spot where I could really just do it faster if I had your assistance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's just I don't want to call it a luxury, but it's something maybe if that person wasn't there, you could do by yourself, but if they are there and they're willing to help, it just makes things a little bit quicker and simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. So think through your day and what all needs to get done, and maybe kind of divide that list into two piles of, these are the things I can do myself. These are the things that if there's someone available, I will ask, or I will accept help. Yeah.
Well, are there any other tips or encouragements that you would give to somebody who is trying to adapt to their vision loss?
Just keep saying that you're not the only one in this situation. There are others who have come before you and probably figured out a solution that you can then lean into them. So reaching out to those peer support groups, reaching out to professional organizations and resources. It is difficult, but it's not as difficult when you know you're not alone.
Great. Well, thank you, especially for all the information on guide dogs. There's always lots of questions about them, and people are always fascinated by them. And at least I know the folks at ANC that have guide dogs, when they go out to resource fairs and things, people always remember the dogs and are excited to see the dogs. And sometimes you have to remind people that they're working and not to pet them and those kinds of things. But there's always lots of questions about guide dogs. So I appreciate all that information.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
So next week will be our final week of the month, and we'll be focusing a little bit more on adapting to hearing loss and what that entails, and maybe how it's similar or different if somebody's had some vision loss and now they're experiencing hearing loss as well. I hope everyone enjoys their holidays. Ellie, I hope you do too, your dad's birthday and the holidays, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And we will be back next week. Again, just a reminder, if you could do a review and rate us on the platform that you're using to listen to your podcast, we would appreciate that. See you next week.